The skies above Seoul burned orange that final summer, not from sunset, but from the toxic clouds that had become Earth's new atmosphere. Commander June stood at the command deck window of the generation ship, Hope, watching as the last groups of humans filed into the massive vessels that would carry them away from their dying home. It wasn't supposed to end this way. The environmental collapse had accelerated beyond all scientific predictions. What started as rising seas and stronger storms had cascaded into crop failures, then oxygen depletion, and finally the collapse of entire ecosystems. By 2087, only 50,000 humans remained alive on the surface, gathered at the last habitable zones near the poles. "Commander, the final transport has docked," said Officer Mina, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "All civilians are secured." June nodded, turning away from Earth's scarred surface. "Begin departure sequence. Alert the fleet. D. 12 generation ships had been humanity's desperate last gamble, constructed in just 15 years as conditions on Earth deteriorated. Not beautiful by any means, they were functional, crowded, and carried barely enough resources to sustain their passengers. But they represented something more important: survival. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Planetary Council," said the communications officer. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Director Song, one of the few government officials who had chosen to remain behind. "The Council has completed the final data transfer," she said. "All of humanity's knowledge, art, literature, and genetic records are now aboard your vessels." "Thank you, Director," June replied. "There's still room. We could take more people." "No," Song interrupted gently. "Those of us remaining have made our choice. We'll continue the restoration efforts here, however futile they may seem. Perhaps someday Earth will heal." June swallowed hard. 1 million had been the original evacuation target. Only 50,000 had made it. As the fleet prepared for departure, families huddled around viewports for their last glimpses of home. In the civilian quarters, 7-year-old Jin pressed his small hand against the window, watching continents once green and blue, now mostly brown and grey. "Will we ever come back?" he asked his grandmother, who stood behind him with a hand on his shoulder. "Someday," she said, though her voice wavered. "Your children, or your children's children." She clutched the small bag of Korean soil she'd been allowed to bring, her only physical connection to home. In the ship's agricultural sector, botanist Dr. Yu carefully monitored the seedlings that represented Earth's botanical heritage. Each plant species preserved was a promise that humanity wouldn't forget where they came from, that they would maintain their connection to Earth. "Life support systems at optimal levels," announced the ship's AI. "All vessels report ready for departure." June took one final look at the planet below. "Begin engine ignition sequence." The massive engines of the 12 ships roared to life, a sound felt more than heard through the hulls. Children cried, adults prayed, and many simply stood in silence, as the fleet slowly pulled away from Earth's orbit. As they passed the moon, June ordered all ships to halt briefly. "This is Commander June to all vessels," he said, his voice transmitted throughout the fleet. "Before we leave our solar system, I ask for a moment of remembrance, for those we left behind, for the home that nurtured humanity for thousands of generations." The silence that followed felt heavier than gravity. "And now," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "I ask that we make a promise, not just to survive, but to return. Whether it takes decades or centuries, humanity will come home again." The response came not as cheers, but as quiet determination. Nods, whispered agreements, hands held tightly together. In the observatory dome, astronomer Professor Hyun watched through powerful telescopes as Earth grew smaller behind them. He wasn't just looking at their fading home, but monitoring the dozens of alien vessels that had gathered at the edge of the solar system to witness humanity's exodus. Some galactic species had offered limited help, technical advice, star charts, warnings about dangerous regions of space. Others came merely to observe what they considered the inevitable extinction of another failed civilization. None had offered sanctuary. "They think we won't make it," Hyun told his assistant. "The Centaurians, Give us 50 years before our ships fail. The Proxima Alliance is taking bets on which vessel will be the first to lose life support. Then they don't know humans very well, his assistant replied. As Earth finally disappeared from view, becoming just another pale blue dot among the stars, the fleet set course for the nearest potentially habitable systems. The journey would take generations. Children born aboard would never know Earth except through stories and recordings. But they would carry humanity's legacy and its promise to return. In his private quarters, June recorded the first official log entry of their journey. Day 1 of humanity's diaspora. We leave behind our cradle, but not our hope. Earth made. Us who we are, resourceful, adaptable, and determined. These qualities will ensure not just our survival among the stars, but our eventual return. This isn't the end of Earth's humans. It's only the beginning. The return of Earth's humans. HFY Sci-Fi Story. 300 years passed like water flowing through the fingers of time. What began as 12 desperate ships fleeing a dying Earth had become 17 thriving colonies spread across 9 star systems. Humans, as it turned out, were remarkably good at adapting. On the ocean world of New Busan, floating cities stretched across the endless blue. Children who had never seen land larger than a small island dove from platforms to swim with. The local equivalent of dolphins, 6-finned creatures with luminescent patterns that glowed beneath the water. "Hana, don't go past the safety markers," called out her father from the edge of the farming platform. The 12-year-old waved back but kept swimming, racing one of the creatures through crystal waters. Hana's father sighed, turning back to his work. The floating gardens were his responsibility. Plants growing in carefully balanced nutrient solutions rather than soil. Earth crops modified to thrive in alien conditions. Nothing wasted, everything recycled. This was the way of human colonies now. Efficiency wasn't just encouraged, it was essential for survival. Unlike the established galactic species who had evolved on resource-rich worlds, humans had learned to make do with whatever scraps the universe offered them. On the mining colony of Sejong, humans had built their homes directly into the walls of massive caverns. The surface was too radioactive for permanent habitation, but underground, they'd created something beautiful. Bioluminescent fungi, a discovery of Dr. Sun during the second generation of diaspora, lined the cavern ceilings, bathing everything in soft blue light. "The latest shipment is ready," announced Foreman Jin to the gathered workers. "The Araxians are paying double what they did last year for our processed thorium." The miners nodded with satisfaction. Unlike other refugee species that the galactic community typically exploited for cheap labor, humans had quickly established themselves as technological innovators. Their thorium processing techniques, developed out of necessity with limited equipment, were now considered the industry standard. "They still think we stole the process from someone else," said an older miner, laughing roughly. "Can't believe we figured it out ourselves." "Let them think what they want," Jin replied, "as long as they keep paying." Meanwhile, aboard the research station orbiting the gas giant designated HD-12, Dr. Kim stared at her results with growing excitement. After decades of work spanning 3 generations of her family, they'd finally achieved what many considered impossible. "The simulation is stable," she whispered, hardly believing it herself. The holographic display showed a terraforming process that could, theoretically, restore a damaged ecosystem on a planetary scale. "It's working because we're not fighting nature," she explained to her team later that day. "The traditional approach tries to force environments to change. Ours works, with existing systems, accelerating what would happen naturally over thousands of years." What made the breakthrough possible was data from Earth itself. The long-range probes left behind by the Exodus fleet had continued sending information all these centuries. Against all odds, Earth was slowly healing itself, though the process would take millennia without intervention. This news spread quickly through the human colonies, reigniting an ancient hope. The dream of returning home, which had been little more than a bedtime story for generations of space-born children, suddenly seemed possible. On the agricultural world of New Gyeongju, Governor Park called for the first intercolony summit in 50 years. Representatives from all 17 colonies gathered in the Great Hall, a vast structure built from local timber that resembled ancient Korean temples. "For 3 centuries," Park began, "we've told ourselves we're just visitors here, that someday we'd go home." Many thought it was just a comforting myth. But Dr. Kim's breakthrough changes everything. The discussions lasted weeks. Some colonies had become firmly established, with populations that had never known Earth even through their grandparents' memories. Others had maintained the old traditions more strongly, teaching children to identify as Earthlings first, colonists second. While the summit continued, word of human intentions reached other species. The Proxima Alliance, who had bet against human survival those centuries ago, now sent observers. The Centaurians, who had given humans 50 years before extinction, requested access to terraforming technology. "They're watching us again," noted Security Chief Yoon, observing the growing number of alien vessels in orbit. "Just like when we left Earth. The difference," replied Ambassador Cho, "is that this time they're not waiting for us to fail. They're worried we might succeed." Human curiosity and innovation had carried the diaspora further than anyone expected. Where other refugee species typically clung to the edges of established civilizations, humans had pushed into unclaimed systems, taking risks that more cautious species avoided. In orbital shipyards around the mining colony of Sejong, a new type of vessel was taking shape. Not the bulky generation ships of the Exodus, but sleeker craft designed for the eventual return journey to Earth. Engineers incorporated 3 centuries of technological advances, many of them uniquely human innovations. A small boy watched the construction from an observation deck, eyes wide with wonder. "Will we really go to Earth someday?" he asked his grandfather. The old man smiled, remembering similar questions he'd asked as a child. "Yes," he said, "but Earth isn't just a place, it's who we are. Look around. We've carried Earth with us all along." And it was true. In every colony, humans had recreated pieces of their homeworld: gardens growing earth plants, celebrations of old Earth holidays, stories and songs passed down through generations. They had survived not by forgetting their past, but by honoring it while adapting to the future. As Dr. Kim refined her terraforming technology and the colonies pooled their resources for the eventual return, humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy quietly shifted. They were no longer seen as desperate refugees, but as innovators, survivors, a young species that refused to accept extinction. The diaspora years had changed humans in countless ways, but they hadn't broken the promise made 3 centuries before. Earth's children would return home, the return of Earth's humans. HFY Sci-Fi Story. The Araxian scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sejong system with no warning. Massive and gleaming with a pearlescent sheen that shifted colors in the starlight, it dwarfed the human patrol vessels that quickly moved to intercept it. "Hold position," ordered Captain Su from the bridge of the defender ship Hanbit. Her hands gripped the command console tightly, but her voice remained steady. "All weapon systems on standby only. Let's not start a galactic incident today." The Araxians were known to humans only through scattered reports and rumors from trading outposts. Tall, 4-armed beings with crystalline growths protruding from their shoulders. They controlled nearly 30 star systems and were rumored to be one of the oldest civilizations in this arm of the galaxy. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," said the communications officer. "It's an invitation." The message that appeared on the main screen was surprisingly direct. "Humans of the diaspora, the Araxian Confederation extends greetings. We wish to establish formal diplomatic relations. Your species has attracted our attention." Within hours, the news had spread to all 17 human colonies. Emergency councils convened, strategies were debated, and ultimately, a small diplomatic team was assembled from representatives of the major settlements. Ambassador Jun boarded the Araxian vessel 3 days later, accompanied by cultural experts, scientists, and a small security detail. As the airlock cycled and the doors slid open, she took a deep breath, knowing she represented not just the current colonies, but all of humanity's future. The Araxian diplomats waited in a vast chamber with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Their leader, who introduced himself as High Commissioner Zrel, bowed deeply in what Jun recognized as a perfect imitation of traditional Korean greeting customs. "How you have studied us," Jun observed. "For decades," Zrel confirmed, his voice resonating strangely through the translator. "Your species fascinates us. Most refugee civilizations either assimilate or fade away. You have done neither." The initial meeting lasted 14 hours. The Araxians were methodical, thorough, and surprisingly forthright about their interest in humans. They had been observing the colonies from afar, monitoring their development and innovations. "Your efficiency technologies are unlike anything we've seen," said their chief scientist, examining the schematics for New Busan's water reclamation system. "Making so much from so little, it's not a skill our kind needed to develop." "Necessity," replied Dr. Min from the human delegation. "We couldn't afford to waste anything." When Jun returned to the human flagship, she gathered the colonial representatives in the conference room. The walls displayed scrolling data from the initial encounter, analyzed and reanalyzed by their best xenopsychologists. "They're not just curious," Jun explained. "They're impressed. The Araxians evolved on a world with abundant resources and developed technology without the pressures we faced. They see our innovations as valuable." "Do they see us as a threat?" asked Governor Yoon of New Gyeongju. "No," Jun said confidently. "They see us as potential allies, different enough to be interesting, similar enough to be compatible." Over the following weeks, delegations were exchanged. Humans visited Araxian ships, and carefully selected Araxian representatives toured the colony of Sejong. What became increasingly clear was that humans had earned something rare in galactic politics: respect. "Your people built all this in just 3 centuries?" asked Zrel as he observed the massive underground city. "From nearly nothing. We brought knowledge with us," explained his guide, "but had to adapt it to new conditions with limited resources." The Araxian ran one of his 4 hands along a wall, built from materials that had been considered mining waste, before humans found a way to process it. Most species would have perished. In a gesture of trust, the Araxians shared their star charts and knowledge of nearby civilizations. Humans learned they were relatively fortunate. Many refugee species ended up as client states, or worse, effectively enslaved by more powerful civilizations that rescued them. During a formal dinner celebrating the new diplomatic relationship, Jun finally broached the subject that had been carefully avoided in official talks. "Our long-term goal is to eventually return to Earth," she said, watching the Araxians carefully. "Our original homeworld." The table fell silent. The Araxians exchanged glances with their multiple eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of surprise. The humans had learned. "After all this time," Zrel finally asked, "your colonies are established, prosperous even. Why risk everything to return to a world that rejected you?" Jun considered her words carefully. This wasn't just about diplomacy, it was about helping these aliens understand something fundamentally human. "Earth didn't reject us," she explained. "We are Earth, its children. When your child is sick, you don't abandon them forever. You give them time to heal, and then you return." The metaphor seemed to resonate with the Araxians, who had their own strong familial bonds. Zrel nodded slowly. "And you believe your homeworld has healed?" "Our probes indicate it's recovering, but slowly. With Dr. Kim's terraforming technology, we could accelerate the process." The Araxians conferred among themselves in their native language, crystal growths glowing softly with changing colors. Finally, Zrel turned back to the human delegation. "The return of a species to a homeworld. It's unprecedented in our records. Many would find the concept unsettling. It challenges the established order." Jun felt her heart sink but kept her diplomatic smile in place. "However," Zrel continued, "the Araxian Confederation did not become great by fearing the unprecedented. Your terraforming technology interests us greatly. Perhaps an exchange could benefit both our peoples." That evening, as the human delegation returned to their ship, there was a cautious sense of hope. Not just for the new alliance, but for what it might mean for the dream of returning to Earth. "They didn't say no," Jun told her team. "They're intrigued by the idea." "Will they help us?" asked Dr. Minjun looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere among them, Earth waited. "They'll help us because they want to see if we can actually "Do it," she said. "We've surprised everyone by surviving the diaspora. Now they want to see what else humans are capable of." Word spread through the colonies in the following days. The return to Earth, a dream that had sustained humans through 3 centuries of exile, now seemed possible not just as a distant hope, but as an achievable goal. With Araxian support, humanity would no longer be alone among the stars. Human beings, it seemed, had earned their place in the galactic community not by conquest or intimidation, but through their stubborn refusal to fade away. The Return of Earths. Humans, HFY Sci-Fi Story, the joint human-Araxian expedition ship Searcher, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. For the first time in 3 centuries, human eyes gazed directly upon the planets of their ancestral home system. The bridge fell silent as everyone stared at the view screens. Captain Han clutched the small vial of Earth soil that had been passed down through 10 generations of his family. His great-grandmother's great-grandmother had taken it during the Exodus, a promise to return it someday. "System scan complete," announced the ship's AI. "All planets accounted for, no immediate threats detected." "Take us in slowly," Han ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Standard approach to Earth." The Searcher moved deeper into the system, past the gas giants that had once been the frontier of human exploration. Now they were merely waypoints on a journey home. The ship's sensors recorded everything, gathering data to be analyzed later. Beside Han stood Zrel, the Araxian ambassador. Even he seemed to understand the weight of the moment, his usual chatty demeanor subdued as his 4 arms remained folded across his chest. "Your people have waited a long time for this," he said quietly. Han nodded. "For 300 years, every human child has learned that we would return someday. Now we'll see if it was just a story we told ourselves, or if it can become reality." As they approached Mars, the sensors detected something unexpected: energy signatures on the planet's surface. "Magnify Sector 4, Han ordered, leaning forward. The screen showed structures, clearly artificial and definitely not of human origin, sprawled across what had once been the Valles Marineris Canyon. "Mining operation," said Chief Science Officer. "Min analyzing the data. Looks like it's been there for at least 50 years. The Voidborn," Zrel said, his crystal shoulder growths darkening to a deep purple, an Araxian sign of concern. "Resource extractors. They claim unoccupied systems. And strip them bare, we've had conflicts with them before." Han exchanged glances with his first officer. "This complicated things. Continue approach to Earth, alert status yellow." As they passed the moon, they saw more evidence of Voidborn activity. Automated mining drones had left scars across the lunar surface, but it was Earth itself that everyone waited to see. When it finally appeared on the main view screen, gasps echoed across the bridge. Blue. After all this time, Earth was still blue. "Atmosphere analysis shows oxygen levels at 19%, reported Min, her voice shaking slightly. "Carbon dioxide levels drastically reduced from Exodus records. The planetary ecosystem is healing itself." Tears welled in several crew members' eyes. The Earth they saw wasn't the toxic wasteland they had fled, though it wasn't yet the vibrant paradise of ancient records either. It was somewhere in between, a patient slowly recovering from a grave illness. "Look at the continents," said Navigation Officer Yoon. "The coastlines are different. Rising sea levels had reshaped the world. What had once been coastal cities now lay beneath the waves. New islands had formed where mountain ranges met the risen oceans. The continents themselves were visibly greener than in the final Exodus images, forests having reclaimed what had once been human cities. "Life finds a way," murmured Min, studying the readings. "With humans gone, nature began to rebalance." The ship settled into orbit, and Han ordered detailed scans of the entire planet. For 3 days they mapped every continent, recorded weather patterns, and analyzed the recovering ecosystems. The results were promising. Earth was well on its way to becoming habitable again, though the process was far from complete. On the 4th day they detected the Voidborn. "Scout ships rising from the southern hemisphere," reported Security Chief Kang. "3 vessels heading directly for us." "Shields up," Han ordered calmly. "Open communications channel." The Void-born ships were angular, resembling metallic insects with sharp protrusions that served both as weapons and mining tools. When their commander appeared on the communication screen, Han was surprised to see a being that looked almost like a mechanical spider, with multiple glowing eyes and clicking mandibles. "This system is claimed by the Void-born Collective," the commander stated without preamble. "State your purpose or withdraw." Han stood tall. "I am Captain Han of the Human Expedition Searcher. Earth is our home world. We have come to assess its condition." The Void-born commander's eyes flickered in what might have been surprise. "Humans? The extinct species?" "Not extinct," Han corrected firmly. "Displaced, and now returned." What followed was a tense exchange. The Void-born claimed salvage rights to the abandoned system. When Han explained that humans intended to reclaim and resettle Earth, the Void-born commander actually made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Impossible," the commander stated. "This planet remains contaminated in many regions, and even if it were habitable, the Collective has already begun preliminary resource assessment. We have prior claim." "Your earliest activity in this system dates back only 50 years, Zrel interjected, the Araxian diplomat stepping forward. "Human claim predates yours by millions of years." The Void-born commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Claims must be maintained to remain valid. The Collective recognizes no hereditary ownership of worlds." When the communication ended, the mood on the bridge was somber. The Void-born hadn't threatened them directly, but the message was clear. They wouldn't simply hand over the system. They haven't established a major presence yet, Min observed, reviewing the scan data. "Mostly automated mining operations on Mars and the Moon. Only a small forward base on Earth itself, near what used to be Antarctica." Han nodded slowly. "They're just beginning their operation. If we wait too long, they'll strip this system, like they have dozens of others," Zrel finished. "The Void-born don't colonize, they extract everything valuable and move on." For the next 2 weeks, the Searcher continued its mission, sending down probes to collect samples from every continent. They confirmed what the scans suggested. Earth was healing faster than expected. The natural world had proven remarkably resilient. Forests covered what had once been cities. New species had evolved to fill ecological niches. The toxic clouds that had driven humanity away had dissipated. On their final day in orbit, Han ordered a shuttle mission to the surface, the first humans to set foot on Earth in 3 centuries. He led the team himself, landing in a meadow that their records indicated had once been part of a country called Korea. As the shuttle door opened and Han stepped onto Earth's soil, he felt a connection he couldn't explain, as if his body recognized this world at a cellular level. The air was sweet. The gravity felt perfectly calibrated for his bones. This was what humans had been designed for. He knelt and opened the vial he had carried, pouring his family's soil back onto the ground where it belonged. "We're home," he whispered, "and we're coming back for good." When the Searcher finally departed, the Sol system, it carried more than just scientific data. It carried hope and a warning. Earth was recovering, but it wasn't safe. If humans wanted to reclaim their homeworld, they would need to act quickly before the Void-born stripped it of resources. The colonies would need to unite as never before. They would need allies, and they would need courage. As Han recorded his final log entry before the jump to faster-than-light travel, he chose his words carefully. These would be the words that either rallied humanity to reclaim their birthright or consigned Earth to become just another depleted world in the Void-born's wake. "Earth calls to us," he concluded, "not as a memory but as a living world. Our home still exists and it needs us as much as we need it. The road back will not be easy, but we have never chosen the easy path. We are humans, and we are going home." The Return of Earth's Humans, HFY Sci-Fi Story. The largest fleet gathered in human history dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation at the edge of the Sol system. 73 ships, everything the colonies could spare, from massive carriers to nimble fighters. At their center was the command vessel Homecoming, where General Choi stood watching the holographic display of their ancestral solar system. "All ships report ready," said his second-in-command. "The Araxian support fleet will arrive within the hour." Choi nodded, his weathered face solemn. He had trained for this moment his entire life, as had his parents and grandparents before him. For 3 generations, the colonies had prepared for this day, building ships, training crews, and developing the technologies they would need. "Begin Phase 1, he ordered. "Deploy reconnaissance drones." Across the fleet, small unmanned craft launched in swarms, racing ahead to gather intelligence. In the 3 years since Captain Han's expedition, the Voidborn had accelerated their mining operations throughout the system. Early reports showed they had established a major base on Earth's moon and expanded their Antarctic outpost. "They know we're coming," said Intelligence Officer Yuna, studying the incoming data. "Their defense grid is active." Of course they knew. The human intention to return had never been a secret. What the Voidborn didn't know was how humans planned to fight, not through brute force but with strategy and innovation. "Launch Phase 2, Choi ordered. From the carrier ships, smaller vessels deployed, not weapons platforms, but specially designed terraforming ships carrying Dr. Kim's revolutionary technology. While the main fleet held position, these ships slipped past the outer planets, using the gas giant's gravity wells to mask their approach. On the bridge of the lead terraforming vessel, Green Hope, Dr. Kim herself monitored the systems she had, spent a lifetime perfecting. At 78 years old, she had insisted on being part of this mission. If she was going to die, she wanted it to be in sight of Earth. "Approaching deployment coordinates," reported her pilot. "Voidborn patrols detected at coordinates 227 by 344. "Maintain course," Kim ordered. "Their sensors won't distinguish us from background radiation as long as we keep our energy signature low." The fleet of terraforming ships spread out, taking position in a carefully calculated grid around Earth. Each carried genetically engineered microorganisms designed to accelerate the planet's natural healing processes, breaking down remaining toxins, enriching soil, purifying water. Meanwhile, at the edge of the system, the first diplomatic contact with the Voidborn began. "This system belongs to the human species by right of origin," Ambassador Jun stated firmly, as the Voidborn commander's image flickered on the main screen. "We have returned to reclaim our homeworld." "Your claim expired when you abandoned the planet," the Voidborn commander replied, mandibles clicking in what humans now recognized as amusement. "The collective has invested resources in preparing this system for harvest. We will not depart." June had expected this response. The real purpose of the conversation wasn't to convince the Voidborn. It was to keep their attention focused on the main fleet, while Phase 2 completed deployment. "Then perhaps we can discuss a compromise," she continued. "Certain areas of the system could remain under Voidborn control for resource extraction, while Earth itself, no compromise," the commander interrupted. "This conversation is finished. Withdraw your fleet or be destroyed." When the communication ended, Jun turned to General Choi. "That went exactly as expected." "How long until they detect the terraforming ships?" he asked. "Our analysts predict they'll spot them within 3 hours," Jun replied. "By then, it will be too late to stop the process." Phase 3 began at dawn, Earth time, as the Voidborn battle fleet approached the human position, ready to enforce their demand for withdrawal. Dr. Kim's ships activated their systems simultaneously. The effect wasn't immediately visible. The changes began at a microbial level, but sensors throughout the system detected the sudden surge of energy. "What have you done?" demanded the Voidborn commander when communication was re-established. General Choi allowed himself a small smile. "We've begun healing our world. The process is now irreversible." The truth was more complex. Dr. Kim's terraforming system didn't just heal Earth. It made the planet uniquely suited for human habitation, while making it less valuable to the Voidborn. The engineered microorganisms would bind heavy metals in the soil in forms that were difficult to extract. They would restructure certain mineral deposits into configurations with lower industrial value but greater biological value. In essence, the humans had started a process that would make Earth less profitable to exploit and more difficult to mine, while making it more habitable for themselves. You destroy the resource value of an entire world. The Voidborn commander seemed genuinely shocked. This violates all principles of economic rationality. We don't see Earth as just resources, Choi explained. It's our home. The Voidborn, it turned out, were practical above all else. After 3 tense days of standoff with their sensors, confirming that Earth's mineral composition was indeed changing in ways unfavorable to their mining operations, they proposed a new arrangement. The inner system has reduced value now, the commander conceded. However, the outer planets and their moons remain viable. The collective proposes division of the system, Earth and its moon to humans, the rest to Voidborn operations. June and Choi exchanged glances. This was better than they had hoped for. We accept with monitoring provisions and defined extraction limits, Jun replied. The agreement was formalized within days. The Voidborn, while ruthless resource extractors, were also calculating business entities. They simply reallocated their assets where they would generate better returns. 1 month later, the first human settlement ships entered Earth orbit. Unlike the desperate exodus vessels of 3 centuries past, these were carefully planned colony ships carrying everything needed to establish sustainable communities. The first landing site was chosen for its symbolic value, the Korean Peninsula, not far from where Captain Han had stood during the reconnaissance mission. June was among the first group of settlers. As the shuttle doors opened and she stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time, she was struck by the rich scent of the air, similar to the recycled atmosphere of the colonies, but somehow deeper, more complex. "Welcome home," said Dr. Kim, who had insisted on being in the first landing party despite her age. She knelt with difficulty, her fingers digging into the soil. It will take time, but the healing has begun. The first settlement was named New Beginning. Solar-powered prefabricated structures expanded over the following weeks as more colonists arrived. Engineers deployed atmospheric processors to speed the air's recovery. Botanists planted Earth species that had been preserved for 3 centuries in colony seed banks. Children born on distant worlds played in Earth's lower gravity, laughing as they discovered they could jump higher, run faster than they ever could in the colonies. Elders wept as they watched Earth's sun set with their own eyes, not through recordings or simulations. 6 months after the first landing, with settlements established on 3 continents, General Choi presided over a ceremony that many had thought would never happen. On a hillside overlooking what had once been Seoul, now a meadow dotted with wildflowers, he unveiled a monument, carved from stone, quarried from every human colony world, and inlaid with metals from Earth itself. It bore a simple inscription. "We left as refugees, we returned as builders." As the ceremony ended, a young girl approached the general, tugging at his sleeve. "Are we really staying forever?" she asked, her eyes wide. Choi knelt to her level, smiling. "Yes, little one, this is where humans belong. But I heard my parents say Earth is still sick in many places." "It is," he admitted, "but so were we, in our own way. Now we'll heal together." That night, as settlement lights glowed across what had once been empty land, Jun stood on a bluff watching distant thunderclouds roll across restored skies. The journey wasn't over. It would take generations to fully restore Earth's ecosystems, to rebuild human civilization in harmony with the planet rather than at its expense. But for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity's future wasn't among unfamiliar stars. It was here on the world that had shaped their species, given them life and now welcomed them home again. The diaspora had changed humans, making them more adaptable, more innovative, more aware of their place in the galaxy. They returned, not as conquerors but as caretakers, bringing with them 300 years of hard-won wisdom. Earth's humans had come home, and this time they would get it right.